We'll begin, as we always do, with the approval of our last meeting's minutes. That would be the sheet of paper that I can't find. What happened to me being so extra organized this morning? The date of that meeting was, again, somebody help me out, June the 5th?
August 21st,
August 21st.
2014.
August. What the heck did I do with my... Oh, here. Okay. All is well. So any comments on that? We've received and reviewed the minutes of that meeting. Are there corrections to be made? Anyone? Let's bring a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All in favor? All right. Minutes are good. No protest. Public comment. We have quite a crowd here today. No one's out there, so we'll move on to the fourth section, old business. And I guess we'll begin this section again by publicly recognizing Anna Brady's hard work and devotion to this topic. I appreciate everybody showing up and being a part of this effort. And I think we all recognize that Anna, for the last few months in particular, has been doing just a huge portion of whatever we're accomplishing here, particularly with the historic neighborhood recognition. So we're going to go ahead and
Thank you. So do you want to, I'll just announce the date? Yeah.
Tell us where we are with that and if we've received our marker and
Sure.
what the plan is.
Yeah, the marker is in-house, and the dedication is set for December 6th. It'll be at 10 a.m. We'll invite, TDC, City Council, Neighbor County Historical Society, because obviously parking is going to be a little bit of an issue there, but we're looking forward to it. And afterwards, I plan to have a walking tour for those who are interested. And I'm also going to unveil a virtual tour of Osceola Park as well on December 6th, too. So for those people that can't make it to the walking tour, or they want to, check out the tour online, or even in the future, it'll be available for community citizens, visitors, tourists. They'll be able to learn a lot more about the history of Osceola Park through that virtual tour. So I'm really excited about that project. I think it's a good prototype for our community that we could develop in other historic neighborhoods to help engage citizens and raise awareness about our history. So that's it.
Any preparation to be done for the walking tour, or are you just strolling by a number of properties that you selected? Or
yeah, I'll be just taking a route, down the different streets in the National Register District, and picking out a few houses to interpret and talk about their history. And also kind of treat it like a walking audit, because we are a neighborhood that's trying to revitalize. So we'll point out some issues we're having in the neighborhood as well, some challenges and some opportunities. So,
and we'll revisit that topic in a little while and look again at the piece of paper that Deborah's directed our attention to about Wellington's way of dealing with some of these issues. Okay. So that's everything's taken care of there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, or will be.
We can move on then to the creation of our presentation for the public on historic designation of properties in the city of Vero Beach. I understand that Anna has worked on a PowerPoint demonstration. We ended our last meeting agreeing to all do our best to bring certain materials with us or ideas. I did just the skeleton of a PowerPoint. And then I've also asked the office to copy off some questions that I think we should be prepared to field, when we get to that point. And you should have them. I think they were brought by. So if you would like to start, Anna.
Okay. So I kind of got some inspiration from the San Antonio Preservation Commission, and they have a series of workshops that they call Conversations in Historic Preservation, where they invite the public to come in 4 times a year and just talk about what historic designation means. They talk a lot about districts, too. So I kind of titled, the first title of the slide was Conversations on Historic Preservation. I thought that would be a good way to engage the community. And then I just had some basic slides with photos talking about the main topics. Like, for instance, what does your historic designation mean to you and your property? And I have some notes as well that I can put together so that if we were to do this in this forum, each one of us could kind of explain those slides. And then obviously the second is, what is historic designation? What makes a building eligible for local designation? And I have that outlined in slide 4. Why would property owners want to designate their property? And I'm going to explain, or what can be explained there is to help preserve the existing character of the historic buildings and try to avoid the inappropriate alterations. And we can explain further. I tried to do that graphically, like what might be an inappropriate alteration. The one house on the left that has the original wood windows, and the one on the right that had, newer modern windows that didn't even replicate the old. And then what's the basic process if a citizen did want to come in and designate their property? And I have that spelled out in just 4 easy steps, notifying the planning department, filling out that application, some research might be necessary, and then it's going to come to the HBC commission for their review and recommendation, and then finally it would go to the city council meeting for a final resolution. Those are the 4 major steps. Next, I anticipate that a lot of people would be asking, what kind of changes can I make to a locally designated property? So there's a way to easily explain to people that they can make repairs in kind with no review process. And then a minor alteration, such as a re-roof, might be able to, that they have to go to get a building permit for, would have to be signed off by the City of Vero Beach planning staff. So it's going to come across their desk anyway, so they would just review it at that time. And then any major alterations, such as a new addition, or if someone were to apply for demolition or rehabilitation, those are the types of things that would come to our board that required a formal meeting. And then we get into, let's see here. I've got my slides that I'm looking at here. I guess, what are the standards that we use? We could get into those guidelines, and then some additional facts on what historic designation does and doesn't do, and then just a question and answer kind of format. So that's all I had. And I'm working on notes. I have draft notes that I can get out to everyone so we can kind of put everybody's ideas together. Something just succinct, clear responses for the public.
So, trying to devise a timeline here for when we'll actually be able to do at least the initial one here. Mm-hmm. We're going to do the dry run here, right? Is everyone still good with that plan?
Yeah.
So, before we do that, do we need to get together to assemble these components one more time? It would seem
well, probably some
logical.
Feedback. Maybe I need to get out the notes to everyone too for each of the slides. And you said you have some comments if you want to talk about them today. That's fine.
But then, as far as
we're going to have to meet again, I think, too.
Assembling a formal delivery of how we're going to do this. The other thing that I thought might be good is we could do the typical PowerPoint demonstration, except ours will be so interesting with these jazzy pictures. then I thought we could do a plant where we could take Ken or whoever is available to help and supply them with bizarre questions. Trick the panel questions. Someone we could rely on actually using our programmed questions.
That's what you get for showing up.
Yeah, he's grinning already. Okay, we won't choose Tim, but that way we can get that out there, and I think that would also work.
Make sure we cover all
Exactly.
That's good.
So maybe we can press Tim and Vicki and other people with preservation interest into service. The thing that I threw together rather quickly, and whenever I do PowerPoints, what I try to do is avoid getting into the cut and paste in the pictures because I never get beyond that. It's like that's the fun part. So I have to get right into the delivering of information. So that's pretty much what I tried to concentrate on. Get the exam over first, and then have fun with the artwork, which I deprived myself of. I also dug this out, Anna, and I thought, you probably have so many photographs, but these are the ones left from the city's birthday party. Those are all local pictures that I think are beautiful and compelling, and you are free to use any of those. And there are also some, you mentioned Texas, San Antonio, is that? Texas has it going on with preservation, which was such a surprise to me. Several of their cities have been really useful to me just as studies to see. I never tire of, for years I've been doing this at night in particular, pulling up different cities and just see what their approach is and what the results have been in preservation. And Texas, hands down, especially a city that I've never visited, and I encourage all of you to go to this site, Round Rock, Texas. They are flawless. Please do this. They particularly have a television spotlight. Their website is incredible, and they have something called the Preservation Minute. So they just air these different spots on their public TV, and they're incredible. So go to those, and I'm sure that they will give us all kinds of good ideas that hopefully we can implement here. They do a local legends award, and they handle their tax exemptions in a very different manner that maybe we'll bring up again in a few minutes. That might be an easier way to accomplish what we're attempting to do here. Anyway, this is how far I got with my deal. I started off with just the basic historic preservation for Vero Beach, Florida. And then I went on to how do we care for our unique historic assets. And then the quote, even if they are there as free advisors and are guiding me in making decisions that protect the value and desirability of my home and neighborhood, I still hesitate to allow the local government to become involved in my home. Does this sound like you? Then you still need additional correct information, because people should enter this willingly without having reservations. And then also a Texas find, one example of renovations with significant expansion to the original home. I found this, which is better than one that I've been hoarding from Coral Gables, that shows, even though I'm not in favor of how they developed their interior space in this older building, it shows the tremendous work that can be done to an existing historic home. This one was, and we can pass this back and forth, this one was enlarged by 2/3.
Oh, wow.
So
they did a meaningful.
So they did a huge one. They took
renovation.
full advantage of the tax incentive and retained the home. You have to really look for it, but it's there. So I've hammered out a lot of text here that we could incorporate into our delivery. I don't think I need to take up time repeating any of this now. We'll just say this, I suppose, for our next go round.
Or do
do
you
you
want
think?
me to take that and kind of combine and work on your feedback and
Does
put that
anyone
into
else?
a presentation?
Did anyone else bring anything for the?
Did you share this with us already, or is this something you're bringing today? What
No,
you have right now?
I had the impression after our last meeting that we were all instructed to bring helpful items that we were hoping we could incorporate into.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I moved.
That's not.
Time for speaking.
No, but in other words, if we could, so we're going to be getting what you have in hand.
Yes,
Right.
definitely. And then at that time, I guess we'll just reassemble our materials and then I'll just hand these off
We'll give
to.
it all to Sherry. We'll get all to Sherry.
Good.
And this too, and then you can.
And just to get us thinking, also, I think all of you already have a copy of this, and I just started with a quote to get you thinking about today's preservation direction and questions we should be prepared to answer at a workshop regarding historic designation. So these are all the things that we are going to have to be ready, willing, and able to non-confrontationally handle. And you may even think of more, although I knocked myself out to come up with just about every variety you could think of. So, and certainly the one thing we're going to have to review again with Tim or Gail, if you're even prepared today, is just what our current thoughts are on the tax abatement process and who qualifies. Because we talked about houses that were being designated on the National Register, as well as houses that were locally designated, as well as houses. What was the third category, Anna? We had 3 categories of eligibility.
I'm not sure.
There was one more. Contributing. So, and then again, what you have to do to participate in that tax abatement. Do you is just owning one of those buildings enough to enjoy a reduction in your taxes, or do you actually have to construct something, and is that the only thing that's subject to,
Improvements. Yeah, it's just improvements right now, is that?
It's supposed to be, then that's how it was designed. It was designed to be an incentive to historically rehabilitate your building, your historic building, in order to encourage the revitalization. And that's why I had questioned the fact of allowing other people who didn't designate their property to be eligible, because you want to ensure that the character of that building is going to also be protected for the future. If you're giving them, if a municipality is giving them that tax break, you want to ensure that that investment will be protected too.
And what method is in place for us to do that? I mean, when I read about the welcome. We'll go easy on you.
I'm afraid. I apologize I wasn't here, but I've got a lot to do, and I'm out tomorrow, so that's
We believe
why I'm
you.
not. But
We
we have
believe
a
you.
draft ordinance on the abatement ready to go, and the attorneys haven't reviewed it yet because we've had a lot of other things we're doing legally. But basically, it's what I explained to you last time, that we're going to include houses that are eligible to be on the register as well as contributing, and that's the big difference. And you will have review of any of those. They have to go through you to get the special certificate. They'll all be required to do that. So we can provide you a copy. I wanted Peggy Lyon or Wayne to look at it before I did it, but it's pretty straightforward.
So to clarify, Tim, so the draft includes verbiage that would allow someone who owns a historic property that's not designated?
That's correct, but you'd have to be eligible, and it'd have to come through you all to get certified, to meet the certification to be on that. Anybody else who's already been designated would have to go through a certification anyway before you, the special certificate.
And so the difference is, after they get that tax abatement and they've done their work, if they're not locally designated, and somebody else buys the house and says, I want to demolish it, or I want to put on a new roof or whatever, it would not come back to our board because they're not locally designated.
Well, no,
right?
there's going to be a covenant placed on it. It
Okay.
won't be,
So
and
then
it'll be set by the
then we
council.
talk.
So a covenant's like being designated because you're not
Binding.
going, you're then under the code.
Okay.
Okay, so
So we would probably theoretically encourage them to get that designation. Too, at the
yes,
same
I
time.
mean, and I said the only the downside is that it's only a tax exemption from our ad valorem tax, not the county. And
Right.
it would be good to politically see if the county would be willing. That would be much more of an incentive because of their taxes on top of ours.
And where are we with that? Because we did say that we were interested in pursuing working with the county.
Okay, well, I
Or
thought
where do we
if-
need to go?
I thought that we'd get this ordinance through to show what
Okay.
we have to do. Is the county would have to go through and pass an ordinance, so
Okay.
that require and. I'd like us to do it first. I think
Got
that
it.
would be the first thing to show our commitment and see if the county would be willing to do that.
That's
Okay.
right. You did say that, so
Yeah,
I
no, that's
appreciate
all right.
the reminder. No,
I'm sorry,
thank you.
and I apologize. I'm really busy now, and it isn't that I got a capable person, Gail, to handle things. So, but I heard that. I didn't want you to get misled. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. And we'll have Sherry send out. I'll send out the draft copies. I just wanted the attorneys to look at it first. It's pretty simple, but okay. Hey, thanks everyone.
Tim, while we have your attention, the CLG status, are we there yet?
Par-
Would you like to hear? It's been submitted to the National Park Service, and we're waiting to hear back from them.
We lip read.
It seems they take forever to do things. I mean,
Doesn't it?
so and until the National Park Service look at it, I think it's just, it's pretty automatic.
It's a formality.
Yeah. So until we have their okay, we won't be able to.
We
aren't certified
would
yet.
like to have some actual money to do things with to help move things along. So until we get that, till we're legal, we can't apply for anything, and everybody else is ahead of us.
You can apply. You just aren't going to have the same benefits that you get if you're certified.
You just have more
Yeah.
leverage, but
Yeah.
we can apply.
Yeah.
Can we apply, staff?
Well,
I think-
we'll try to, but I mean, I think one of the
Cut off.
first things we had talked about is getting an update of
Survey.
our survey, and that would take local money. So and that has to be budgeted. So we would have, because there's going to be some local money involved that we'll have to come up with. So we get to that point, we'll see if we can get that budget. It'd have to be next fiscal year at this time. I mean, we're pretty tight. It is that they can't change the budget, but pretty well set. And my boss is here, so he can shake yes on that. So
'Cause
we'd
I
have
think
to.
there's a December grant cycle that would
Yeah.
be for the survey. Well,
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Yeah, I
Have
think
to
our
double check.
survey would not be till the next grant cycle, just because we have to put it in the budget cycle.
So then,
Well, we
it's gonna
waited
put it
this
off
long,
2-3
you know.
years, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we could even maybe do this survey piecemeal if we only have so many dollars at a time.
That's
But
probably what's going to.
And you could do that because, for instance, Anna has already done some work when she did both the two, Original Town and
As a
and,
young girl.
Osceola Park. It isn't that long ago.
I was a young girl then.
I'm not imagining it. It's,
Okay, unless you
it is
need
taking
me.
forever.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for showing up. Next time you need a note from your mommy. All right. That we love you. Just nobody else gives him such a hard time. We've got to do it. All right. I just seems like my fear is that we have great intentions here. I really want brisk participation, and I don't know if we're going to get it the way that we have it set up. What are your thoughts? I mean, when I look particularly at, I was okay with all of this till I pulled up that darn, what did I say it was? Black Rock, Texas, Red Rock,
Round Rock.
Round Rock, mixing up my rocks. And they just have it down to a science. They have partial abatement, so if you just want to go so far with your property, if you're not doing anything with it, you still realize the savings. And I think that's what's going to bring people in. And how many people are going to want to designate purely because they're enthralled by the idea of having a historic property and being part of a society of people that own historic properties. I think that's more of an advanced mentality. I think you have to bring them in with something, first phase. And not everyone that has a house over 50 years old that's eligible and falls into either, satisfies any of those three criteria, are going to want to designate, if they're not going to be doing renovations of any scope on their homes. I mean, I would be sitting there going, what difference does it make then? Why should I? The plaque is nice, but, I don't know.
I agree.
This place in Texas, they check your property every year. You get a discount on your taxes if you have a historic property, whether or not you improve it with additions and alterations. I think it's 75% for 15 years, which is a huge incentive. So they figure they averaged it out, everybody saves at least $1,000 in their taxes. And the mentality there, the thinking is, people are going to pour that grand back into these houses that they're saving their tax money on, and then you're improving the quality of those properties and the demographic. So, and the economy, and I don't have to explain that process to any of you. So I don't know if what we're doing is going to be enough, and we're working so hard on this.
Well, I agree that a substantial financial incentive is going to facilitate the designation process. I mean, we know that, but we have to deal with the parameters we have right now. And number one is city cannot go in and designate a district. We have to have, first of all, we don't have the language yet for the district, and that's going to make everybody eligible really for those tax incentives. Two, we have the ordinance that's going to make people eligible. So we're just not there yet. I think we have to start with where we're going. We talked about this community engagement piece and inviting people in to come. Let's talk about historic preservation. So we're on the road to that. We talked about possibly the first of the year having a workshop, and then we'll get a feel for, is anybody interested in getting their building designated just because they're interested, they have a historic house, they're enthusiastic about the history and want to get a plaque, and we'll get a real, a real feel for who wants to do that, and keep moving towards implementing that tax incentive. Those are the parameters we're in.
I think the
right
presentation will help. I think the way we do that in a positive, optimistic manner, I think will encourage more people, given a better understanding. So I think in doing that, that's a huge step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So we're already moving forward, getting a lot of these and working on implementing them. So I think we're on a good path.
And if there's other financial incentives, Deborah, that you think we should be looking to implement, then let's talk about those now. If that's where you're...
This just seems like, compared to what I've read, like the slow, painful process, the slow, painful way to do it.
Oh, it is.
And I just wish we didn't have to resort to that. And then I fear if we don't get this, pie in the sky, overwhelming response to all of our hard work so far, then you have to do kind of a damage control thing, and then you're going to have you're going to have to pick up everybody's morale for one thing, and then start again and readdress it. And then it's going to look like we're trying to sell something that cannot be sold. So I think, I would much prefer to go into something confident and knowing that it's going to be irresistible, at the onset, rather than stepping back and going, well, now what? Because then you make the job that much harder for yourself. It's that much harder to bring the gospel after it's been rejected once. So
it's already been rejected once. So I think that's the process. But I'm wondering too.
Trust me, it's harder now
with this Round Rock, Texas that you've referenced.
I wonder
where they started, though. I mean, it's not like you.
They started, and it's funny because if you look at this. They started by doing an easement a historic easement, I think, not a conservation easement. And then they just invited all of the houses that fell in that easement to participate, and they all became automatically eligible by virtue of being in that easement.
Geography. Okay.
And so they were all immediately eligible for their tax abatements, and apparently, from the photographs that I've seen, they had a huge response. Why wouldn't they? So there was no way they could resist that. And then they have things like if you have property that hasn't been improved, if you have empty properties that are still within that district, there's still different ways that you can benefit and that encourage you to keep the preservation of that region in mind. So I feel like we have so many holes in our approach.
I don't know if we've given it a chance.
Well, we haven't, of course, because when we go ahead and offer our product, we want to make sure that
But I don't want to, I understand your concerns, but on the one hand, you're almost trying to play both roles, and I think we need to
I think that's my
bore
job.
more, well, yes and no, because as I would prefer we took a more positive outlook, like you say. I mean, and let everybody else worry about the negatives. We already know what they are, so let's just concentrate on the positive outlook and just go forward with what we planned and what we're working on, and just take it from there. I mean, we already know we've already talked about it. We've talked about it a lot, about the negative side. Let's just move forward now with the positive side. I think that's a good approach. We're already working on that with the presentation. We're not going to be showing the negatives in the presentation. We're going to be giving the positive incentives. You don't want to, especially, people will tend to be more negative. You don't want to really feed more into that. You want to encourage them more, enable
well, of
them
course,
more.
that's understood.
But
so what
that-
are you referring to as the negatives?
Well, it's just more of a feeling I get from you, just a sense that you're wondering if we're almost wasting our time. So
Well, because I see all of you being just so devoted to this.
I don't worry about it. I think we can
and I
take
want to
care of
make sure that
ourselves.
we get results. I want to make sure, we're only going to live one lifetime. I don't
I
want
understand that, but I think we're handling this. I think we're doing well. I think we're moving forward. So let's just keep moving forward.
Can we get the local newspapers and magazines involved so that we can get something out there to the general public to read?
That was something you
Yeah.
talked about last time too, was people
Maybe
writing
after the
articles of
presentation.
encouragement and write about what we're doing. I mean, I think we should do that also. You made that suggestion at the last meeting.
do routine press releases about something and anything just to keep the topic
Sure, I
out
think
there.
32963.
Not just when we're, approaching the public about a change or what we're offering. So,
And then maybe do an interview on the local radio show, The Voice, with what's that gentleman's
Brett
name?
Palmer.
Brett Palmer.
Brett Palmer. I'm sure he'll ask questions about, do you want government involved in your house? But then you can explain that it's not like that.
right. Well, those are good ideas.
Maybe we
So-
should talk about talking points within our face to the public. So you wanted ideas on how to approach the public, so perhaps we should do that as part of the presentation of leading up to the articles. How do we present our face to the public?
Well, I think when we do our workshop delivery, the format is going to be PowerPoint, where we describe the process, briefly what historic preservation does, and then go right into the process of designation, and then we'll have questions and answers and discussion. So, other than that, if you have any other ideas or suggestions,
We'll just treat it like an everyday affair. This is normal.
Is there any way to set up meetings with organizations like the Indian River Land Trust and the Rio Mar Club? A lot of those patrons and members of those organizations are, anti-growth and want to preserve Vero Beach, but where's the action?
says the architect.
If it were up to me, I would try to establish several blocks of 14th Avenue as a complete district
I know.
Hey, that thing that they did on the corner of 14th and, what is it, 22nd or something, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, I don't want to be...
14th and 22nd.
Well, 14th Avenue on the corner, they did a big renovation and gave that building a facelift. And I
Oh,
don't think that
21st, I
was-
think, across from the Pocahontas building.
Across the street to the south of the Pocahontas building.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that didn't have any place, and
The thing that looks like it escaped from Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
with all the
With the
horizontal lap
trellising
siding, the trellises,
Yeah.
it looks like they took Anglo-Caribbean architecture and from the houses on the beach and
Well,
thought, well, let's
but-
do that
And
downtown.
But we
the
have no design guidelines downtown. We're just doing this again,
Right.
seat of the pants. Well,
We don't have an
we're
architecture
doing what
review
we
committee
can. We have
anymore.
no
It's been
architectural.
sunset, and they
Right.
won't
No,
bring it back.
no.
So I don't understand why they won't bring it back. You know, I've been to the town of Palm Beach's meetings, and what they say carries weight, and it's kind of disappointing to stand before Bob Vila and the group down there, and then here we're trying to preserve our city, but we have no architectural review committee. And I even tried when I was
we
on the
still have-
architecture
well, this
review
is-
committee to say, okay, houses over 12,000 or 15,000 square feet, they need to be reviewed. But the city council's turned it down.
Sherry, did you want to say something?
There still is an architectural review committee. They haven't met in quite a while, but it's still in town.
They're hiding.
In getting to the point of, you made a good point about a district downtown, a historic district downtown. We're in that situation where we have to, as a board, as members of the board trying to promote the program, entice those property owners to become designated, to even, or be interested in a district. And that's the whole, effort we're trying to make about educating and community engagement about what historic designation means, to overcome that fear level, and then the incentives too are another way to entice them. Here's what, that was another one of the goals for Osceola Park, though, that I did with the National Register District. It doesn't provide any review processes, and it was a way to begin that, to create a comfort level too, that to identify a historic area, but also not scare off the homeowners either that weren't quite sure what it really meant to be a historic district. So that's something we could do from the board level is ask staff, ask our city if they would pursue a National Register District downtown, work with Main Street, work with other groups downtown, and look into the feasibility and the interest in whether they want to establish a National Register District. There are buildings downtown that Mr. Brackett owns that are already on the National Register.
Well, let's meet with the
So
what is that? No, the one that you just mentioned.
Main Street?
Main Street. Let's
Yeah.
meet with it. I'm on the Cultural Council Committee for the it was the diesel power plant building, but it doesn't look like that's going to be very viable at this point. And we've had meetings with all those groups to try to get their support, and I think that maybe we should do the same thing.
Do we handle that individually? One of us individually addresses Main Street? Does staff reach out to Main Street? Do you have any thoughts, Gail, or if there was
Yes,
I was
exactly.
thinking specifically
Invite them
to do that, to make suggestions and to become updated
idea.
with what they're doing and
To express their concerns and what they've been working on and what they'd like to see.
Because there again, the grant cycle's coming up here. They could apply for a grant or partner with us to apply for a grant, because that whole area, they would have to create a boundary. Maybe it's already the downtown district boundary they have. Hire somebody to update the survey, and they could write the National Register nomination as part of that scope of work. And that could be a project right there that's partially grant funded. Maybe some of it's going to have to be some local money that needs to get budgeted, but at least starting to look into that project.
should we attempt to do this ASAP?
Sure.
Yeah, why not? Start the conversation immediately. So
Okay.
our next meeting, I guess.
Is it Sherry that puts out the invitation, or the planning and zoning? Is it, who puts out the invitation?
Well, it'll be staff, so either our office or the planning department.
Would you like either one of us to write a letter or just have planning send them an invitation? Okay. What are your thoughts, Anna?
I think we just start the conversation with them. Obviously, again, it's feeling the temperature of the downtown property owners.
Well, maybe
Which-
they're just really not aware of what they have and the incentives that are available to them. I'm involved in a little project down on 14th. It's just now getting underway, but I'll definitely speak to the owner about, getting his building dedicated. It's more than 50 years old, I'm pretty sure. And so we'll see. If we get one guy to do it,
Yeah.
then, maybe it would be a snowball effect and everyone will just...
Great.
And then if we get enough properties on that section of 14th Avenue designated, then maybe we can, since it's a majority, maybe we can get the whole section, the whole street.
Mm-hmm.
That will be the first, I guess, neighborhood or area designated.
And again, by January, that would be a great group of people to come and learn about the designation process when we give the presentation. It's not that long away, actually. January isn't now.
So with the Main Street meeting, would we reach out just to the Main Street members or the property owners as well?
I would say just their main committee at first.
Yeah.
Start small.
And then you
Yeah,
can
let
even
them-
give them a presentation because we gave them a presentation.
Yeah.
All right.
So you can test the presentation on them.
Uh-huh. That's a good idea.
I mean, they may have big plans that we're just not aware of, too.
Well, maybe they'll let us know.
That we could partner with them on too. It could be.
Okay. So next meeting, should we try to heap it all on? Should we try to do that as well as work on this after the fact, or is that just?
Do you want to you made a comment to
Overwhelming.
test the presentation on them. I think that's a good idea. Do you want to should we invite them for that presentation? Make
Sure.
that the
Oh.
initial contact?
It'd be fun.
Have them help Ken?
Yeah, since Ken's the only one.
Maybe we could have Main Street and the other committees come to the presentation.
I do sit on the board of Main Street as an ad hoc member just from the city, and I think they would be very interested. I would recommend that you do invite Main Street to your next meeting, and maybe, Anna, if you could put together the PowerPoint where we could actually put it up on the board and just say it's a draft, and then search for comments from them. But I think people like Vicki Gould, as an example, who is the president, would be more than happy to participate because obviously her family has a lot of deep roots here, as well as they have investment on that 14th Avenue corridor. And so people like her and Oska, who has property down there, I don't know if their buildings are 50 years old or not, but they own the Osceola Bistro building. And I know it's undergone a lot of renovations and that kind of stuff. So I think if you got the word out to Main Street, and they could put that word out to their members. As a matter of fact, we just had a meeting yesterday talking about the south end of 14th, where Burp's just opened and some of those places, and trying to figure out how to retain some of the image of that area, because parking, for example, is a major challenge. And if through these grants, preservation of the buildings could also be preservation of some of those empty and vacant lots could help as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Good idea.
But I think if you reached out, I believe someone from Main Street would be here to help participate. But I think you really need to have your PowerPoint ready for the screen so they can give
certainly.
comments and that kind of stuff. So
What time of day do you all meet?
we meet in the evening at 5 o'clock.
Would it be more attractive to your Main Street members, do you think, to meet with us in the evening as opposed to in the morning? I mean, I think a lot of people have a tough time getting here because they work and they're not going to.
Good point.
Yeah.
In a 9:30 meeting for somebody who runs a business. It's not-
When we had the meeting with the culture Borough Council. It was at 5:30, I think.
Yeah, that's the only time they really meet.
Sure.
That might be a good idea, is to schedule in for a 5 o'clock
5 o'clock.
evening meeting.
When is your next meeting? Do you know?
We just had one last week, so it'd be 3 weeks. It'd be in November. Well, actually, we have an annual meeting coming up the 28th or 29th of this month. But that really is an informal meeting, and so really no business. But if in fact you want to send out an invitation to them and you hand it to me, I'll be very happy to. I plan to go to that annual meeting. I'll hand it out to Vicky Gould and say, you guys may want to talk about this and plan for, to meet with you guys. I have no problem with that.
Great, thank
But
you.
but you really need to set the date as to when you would be prepared for them to come in, because I'll tell you, the round robin of just sitting around talking about what could go on a PowerPoint is not going to work. So you'll spend all night doing something like that.
Yeah.
Is that possible, Sherry, to do a 5 o'clock?
That's something I'll need to check on, and I'll also need to check on a date and available of staff, so I can't set that today.
Could you do that?
Yeah, I will work on it and let you know.
And what month are we looking at to do this before
Thank you.
January?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking. Like December, or I'm just thinking because of the PowerPoint. We're going to have the PowerPoint ready. So I would say December we could do.
Like the first part of December?
Beginning.
Probably the second week, at least the second week for me, because I've got the dedication the first week.
So are we going to buff the PowerPoint prior to that then? Two separate events? Okay.
Can we discuss the PowerPoint between each other, not between each other, through you, but amongst the board members? We had this conversation last time.
We can submit information. and
So we
that's
have to meet together in order to
Yes, you
hammer
can-
out the draft.
You can send the information to me, but you can. I can send it out to the members, but you can't respond back and forth, even through me. I can't be a filter.
Can I
through.
request comments from them?
No.
Okay, so that would
So
mean
you
that
really
we'd
don't
have to
accomplish
meet in
anything until
November
you're-
in a workshop setting to just
Or you can
finalize
send all the information and let Anna work on it, and right today say, we agree with what she's going to put together, and then,
But obviously, I mean, someone say, well, we want to change this. Well, then, yeah,
Right.
we have to. We would need.
Are
I
you
think we'd
willing
at least
to do
want to have a
workshop,
tentative
Deborah?
workshop scheduled. or
Like she's
something.
saying before.
Pardon?
Willing to do a workshop before the December meeting?
I think what we're saying right now is that we must, if we want to.
If you want to do this in December.
The other thing is,
So you'll have to
although we'll be able to address designation, in a competent manner, I don't feel like I can. I am still absolutely in the dark about whatever methodology you would use to actually bring back things like downtown facades. I know they have facade programs and grants and people with Main Street in Tallahassee that are there to help, but I don't know if they've ever reached out. I don't know if anyone here would even be willing. A number of those properties, here's a case scenario. What if you have someone that owns, say, one of the, I know several of the art galleries have unattractive facades that were added to the original ones. One was even a church. If you stand back and look when the streets were wider, you see, the top of the building. It's still intact, and all they did was kind of like the courthouse in Palm Beach, just weld a fake face on. So these people come to you for designation, and what is our criteria? Well, we have no design criteria. I don't know if we would have to adhere to some Main Street standard that, is already prescribed somewhere.
No,
Do
you
we-
look at the significance of the original building
Right.
and the history of the original building, and then you look at the addition that they put on that storefront in the 50s, and you're going to evaluate it based on that. I don't know if that's an actual 50s storefront or a 60s storefront, but you're looking at the whole historical significance of the building and and the history and who it's associated with. You don't have to this isn't Charleston where you have to get real particular. You can, I want to say, be a little more loose, if that's fair. It's
Liberal?
Less
yes,
restrictive.
liberal in your interpretation of. But it still may meet. I don't have all the historical information on that building, but I would suggest that it would qualify for designation.
Even if the part that is important and attractive is completely concealed.
We don't know who
But
put on the
that's all
storefront and
subjective.
why would they put on that storefront in the 50s or 60s and what that purpose served. And I mean, yeah, if you think you're going to deny them a historic designation because it's not back to that original structure built in the 1920s or 30s, I guess.
I'm not
it was.
suggesting that we do. All I'm pointing out here is that I don't know what the criteria is, or
What do you?
how we would respond to people who would immediately show an interest. You know, I don't want to.
I guess that's what Anna's saying is if someone does inquire, then the research would be done.
Yes.
Based on the history, and then you would make a determination based on whether or not it was relevant. And it sounds like I'm even wondering while you all are talking, how much would it cost if someone's really interested in taking it back? How difficult would it be? I don't know what roof. That's another subject. But how much roof work was done? Is it just a facade? Sometimes they just threw up easy facades to change it to a more modern look. So, somebody might even be interested in taking it back to the original if it's not that much, but we won't know that until someone.
I think it's a square footage issue. They gained, considerable square footage. I mean,
Right.
they gained a building.
But if
front
you're
of the
looking at
building.
historical designation and that's all you would be recommending, whether they should be designated historic, you're not going to look at whether they're taking the addition off or not. You're only going to be looking at that if they are designated and then come in for a certificate of appropriateness to make a change or to remove it. Then you're going to evaluate, well, what did they take it back to? You're going to evaluate it based on its historic significance, based on the architecture, based on who it's associated with, based on events that took place at that location. Those are the criteria, and they are in the ordinance, and staff would educate us on that too before it would be in our packet, and they would probably pull the survey that was done in 1990 because that building would have been surveyed most likely, possibly not. So we would have that information before us in order to evaluate whether that building should be designated.
And even on the same note, as far as awarding COAs to private residences, that certainly would satisfy the criteria of being historic by virtue of, the architecture or the inhabitant or all the above. What if they have elements that have been added that are significant that detract from the original and say they want to renovate or add, yet you have this enduring portion of the building that how considerable is that? How much of a consideration is made?
What are you saying? If that particular building, if that particular property owner came in and said, well, we want to remove the 1950s addition.
No.
Okay.
No,
If we wanna-
we'd all be going,
They want to keep it and they
No.
want to
Yes.
do what to the
they
building?
want
then?
to increase square footage, do whatever that you would need.
Then we would
to make it happen.
evaluate the proposed addition if they're going to add square footage and the look of that addition. If they're going to, first of all, we need to understand the history of why that addition was added on, which we would know during the designation process. And then you're going to weigh that significance versus that new construction they're proposing and whether that's compatible with the original architecture.
So if it were fairly comprehensive, then we would, in essence, be in a position we could deny designation.
You deny designation or deny the COA? You would deny the COA. They would already be designated.
Well, if they have not yet, let's go back and say this is the first go round.
You can recommend that they should not be designated. That's each of our rights. And then it's a vote, and majority would rule.
Okay.
So the example that you're talking about is if someone wanted to put an addition on a building that they wanted to designate to increase the square
Yeah, what if
footage.
someone came in-
About them or a certificate of
Appropriateness.
appropriateness.
Right. So as long
That's
as they
really the
follow the
bigger
period
issue.
style, of architecture.
Would you do the designation?
What she's saying is
Okay.
there's two periods there with that particular building. You have the
Right.
1920s original church, and then you have the 50s/60s add-on. So if they came in and said, well, we want to redo that 1950s, 60s add-on and change it and make it look different and whatever they might propose.
Well, then
it would have to
hope
be
that they would
compatible.
take it back to the 20s.
Right, exactly. And that's what
Maybe.
you'd encourage.
But it's still it's like trying to rewrite history. You can't tell somebody, I don't think anyway, that okay, you've got a 1920s building and somewhere along the line something was added onto it that architecturally is not in keeping with the original building, even though you can't really see the original building anymore. But because you're not taking it back to the original look, no, you can't do that. Because guess what? Every building in this town that was original has had something done to it.
Yeah.
Something has been done, whether it was plumbing or air conditioning or whatever. All of those things have been done. It's the story of that property. So
But those
even though
things are not our-
architecturally, right, but what I'm,
Jurisdiction.
right, but even if it's not architecturally in line with the original structure, it's still a part of that timeline of that property. And if something was added in the 50s, that's what was going on in the 50s, and that still applies to us.
But if what they propose, that building's designated and what they propose is not compatible with architecture, then it would be denied based on
Right.
that. We have guidelines that we would follow and we would have to evaluate.
Right.
We would deny it based
I think we still have to look at
It's
the fact that
evidence.
whether or not it is designated. I think that's still the first process, and that would be. I mean, and then a lot of those
We're not going to
questions-
have a COA for any building. Well, I don't want to say that. Wait. We're not going to have a COA for any building that's not designated, but that might not be true after this new ordinance. So.
But
I'm anxious to
I'm
see that.
not going to count that. So
Yeah.
we would only see a
Right this
COA
minute.
if a building's designated.
Anna, aren't a lot of the criteria though, as far as historic designation? If most of the building's gone, it would be more the place as opposed to the building.
I'm sorry, if most of the buildings
If
what?
most, like
Gone?
right, if most of the structure is not recognizable or gone, you no longer really have the building. Wouldn't it
Yeah,
be
you're not
more
going to
the
have that
place?
architectural significance. We're probably not going to designate.
Right, that's
We're
what
not
I'm
really
thinking.
gonna-
Lean towards designate. It depends. You
So
know,
the
you
first
might weigh George Washington. That's
Yeah, right.
wrong, but
The first step would
John
be
F.
the
Kennedy,
historic
yeah.
designation then. I mean, that's where the
Yes,
process
yes,
begins.
yes,
So until,
yes.
right.
yeah.
All right.
And just to be clear for any for the public, you can't just because a building's designated to, you cannot. We are not asking them to take it back to the original either.
Right.
That I just want them to be, because a lot of people think, oh, does that mean I have to take it back to the original if I designate my property? No, you do not.
Okay. So before we leave that topic, the topic of our meeting with Main Street, any other preparation work that needs to be done, or should we set a date for that now at this point in the meeting?
A date for the
Should we
workshop
jump
in
ahead of
November?
ourselves and set a date for both of those meetings, our next
sure.
one?
We
And
can't set the workshop up yet. We can set the workshop up, but not Main Street yet.
okay.
Because
We
you're
do.
wanting an evening meeting,
A
and I need
proposed?
to.
Oh, we can't even go as far as proposed. Just email us then, and we'll.
I will call
respond.
you or email you and let you know.
Thank you very much.
But we
But
can.
you can do the workshop.
we
I'd
can
rather
do a
you go
workshop.
ahead. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll need Stacy when she comes back to set a date for the
Oh,
workshop.
she's gone. I thought I felt the breeze. Okay. All right. Well, let's we'll revisit that when Stacy's in the room. Now, Gail, I'm imagining that you're waiting to talk about or did Tim handle all that? No, we didn't even touch on this yet. We have to talk about the train.
In regards to the all aboard Florida passenger rail project, the draft environmental impact statement, local governments, agencies, and organizations are given an opportunity to make a comment. And the city's comments are going to be given to Monty Falls, and we had provided the link in the memo to the draft environmental impact statement for you all. And also we have in your packet, there was information from Ruth Stanbridge with areas within the city limits, and if there were any comments, concerns that you wanted to have in regards to these.
Then it looked like you said we can submit comments up to the October 31st. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and I read through Ruth's list that wasn't included in the EIS statement, and I concur, so I don't have anything to add.
Nothing to add, okay.
To Ruth's evaluation.
I had no idea that it was going to be so disruptive to so many sites and properties. Certainly, Ruth would.
Well, she's
Ruth would be aware of
identifying
this.
those that are on the corridor,
Right.
next to, National Register properties
Right.
and National Register eligible properties, and the fact that we're going to be a certified local government as well, and some locally designated buildings like the power plant, diesel plant.
I think you could blindfold Ruth, turn her loose, and she could go to each of these places by now. She's so familiar. I'm not even going to weigh in on this topic, but has a high-speed rail train anywhere in the world not improved the economy and the quality of life and been a bad thing that people don't utilize and boo and regret having? I realize that, there are pluses and minuses to any change, but I just don't know. I've got enough to think about without worrying about trains.
I think the broad view is the fact that it's supposed to be, the way it's being promoted is an economic boom to the state, but they didn't take into consideration the effect on localities. So that's where each area has taken an interest, those that have. Some areas will obviously benefit, others, the train's just passing through. There is no benefit. So that's kind of the broad view. So we as a board, if you have any comments, as Gail was saying, if you think it's going to have an effect, then that's basically what they're looking for. They want to know if we believe that it will have some negative effect. There will not be a stop. There is no promised stop. It's considered high speed. They want to do this within a 3-hour time frame between Miami and Orlando, and there is no time to put in other stops. I know people have been trying to push for Fort Pierce and other areas, but I don't think people from Vero are going to drive from Vero to Fort Pierce to catch a train to go to Orlando or even go to Lauderdale. So there's a lot of different views out there with it, but the main focus right now is the fact that there will not be a stop here, and the average speed is 103 to 110 miles per hour. And do we believe that will affect our historic properties?
And historic areas.
I would be concerned if some of those old railroad bridges along that line are even engineered for such a thing.
They're supposedly rebuilding them.
Yeah.
So why don't they
would
take
have
the
to.
money and rebuild out west of 95 a whole new line?
Because it's a different company.
Different company. They already own this.
It's CSX. This is FEC. Is that right? FEC, Florida
I think
East Coast?
FEC is owned by Norfolk Southern.
Fortress is the main corporation. I'm not sure about the middle, but there's a lot of theories and feelings out there, and unfortunately the bottom line is All Aboard Florida has had plans for quite a few years, at least four that I can probably go back and read about, but they are underneath the umbrella of FEC. There is talk also of extra freight, which is not being addressed as much, and that's also a concern with folks because that's going to be increased traffic. One of the things that hasn't been answered clearly to me is once the train hits the border of Indian River County and exits the border, will all the gates have to be down at the same time because the train is going so fast? So, we don't know. And being a private corporation, they've only given out so much information. because based on trade secrets and what have you. I think this thing should have been, if it was truly going to be promoted as an economic boom, I think the state should have included more of us from the beginning instead of just trying to tell us this is going to be good for everyone.
Yeah, I was disappointed in the EIS and the lack of identification of the historical sites in our city and in our county. Even some of the National Register sites in the county that I wrote National Register nominations for, I didn't understand why those weren't identified. And Ruth laid those out in a good comprehensive list that she's submitted to us and to Gail. I think in the city of Vero Beach, our two most vulnerable properties are the diesel plant, and then we have the Vero Man archaeological site. So, it's definitely important for us to get our comments into this report regarding our historic resources and the potential historic district downtown as well. You can look at it in that case that it is a potential historic district. So.
So who's prepared to respond to this if we're going to weigh in? Are you going to send a letter, Anna, or?
No, I was saying that I concur with those properties that Ruth Stanbridge identified. Do we need an additional?
So what do we need to do to respond to this?
We can respond individually if we want to by October 31st, or provide your comments today, part of our minutes. Right? Or do we need to make a formal statement or
a motion or?
Just as a suggestion, I think as a commission, you could say you endorse those comments, and then that way there would be an official statement from the city, from the commission who is responsible for that type of activity. And the only thing you have to do is say you endorse the other positions.
The concern, we basically endorse the concerns.
Correct. And then at least you have a weigh-in on the item.
So for the record, yes, Tim, come forward. Ken.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Commission members. Ken Daig, 1846 21st Avenue. I am the high-speed rail chairman for the City of Vero Beach. I just wanted to weigh in just a tad on this. To echo what the city manager had to say, I think that's a good suggestion. I also think it's if you could add where you're endorsing it, give a couple little reasons why. Because when this is being read in Washington, it will help make an impact. You had some good comments here of where Ruth did a study on the historical properties. I think you brought up about the businesses, the old diesel plant, of why this will have an effect on our community here in this town. And remember now, this train, and this is according to what All Aboard Florida has told us, it's 103 to 110 through our city. And we've certainly heard from a lot of people on the commission that I sit on. They're not too happy about this. The majority of the community is against it. We've had some people that are in favor of it, hoping for a stop here. According to All Aboard Florida, there will be no stop here. There is no stop planned for the future. There's a lot of things that have to take place for a stop. In fact, if there is a stop put into communities, it has to have some type of security measures put in place. So it's very expensive to build a stop. So, and back to the 3 hours of where they've set it up on a time frame from Miami to Orlando. If they stop along the way, that interrupts that flow. So no stop here, and really we haven't found any type of benefit for this area. So anything that you can do as a board would be most helpful for when this goes forward to Washington. We're going to need all the help we can get because as it was stated here, this has been in the planning stages for quite some time. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask or send me an email. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Well, one of the problems that I kind of see with that is that, the FEC line is basically mostly a single rail. There's going to be two. So they're going to expand. Because here in Vero, it turns into two for a distance.
That's correct.
And then somewhere between here and Sebastian, it goes back to one.
Right. According to what All Aboard Florida has told us, and this is on record with the meetings that we've had, they're laying in a second track. And that second track, where we have the single track here in the city of Vero Beach for a good amount of the distance, will be to the west. They have a 100-foot corridor out there.
Okay, so they have an easement.
Yes. In fact, this is on the record, too, when we had the All Aboard Florida president here to address our commission. The Florida All Aboard Florida president stated that if they wanted to, they could put in 7 tracks. They have the room to do that.
7.
Yes, and that's on record, by the way, by the All Aboard Florida
Well, there goes the
president.
downtown. Well, no, it's within
Rail
that.
yard.
It's within, no,
It's
it's
within
within
their-
their, it's within
Right.
their easement or whatever you want to call it. that they
It's
own.
within their corridor. Their corridor
It's
is
just the
100
trains
foot
so
wide.
close.
Possibly ram 7
But I
tracks.
think their plan is only to expand to 2-line.
As it
Moment.
as it stands now, and there was some. You've had some conversation about the increased freight. There is talk, even though All Aboard Florida is a separate arm of the Fortress Company, the other part of the company, they are planning to increase freight, but that's another conversation. And I have a lot of stuff on our site that the city has. If any of you folks are interested, as far as taking a look at some of their trends with the freight issues.
Thank you again.
Yeah, that was
Ken.
my whole point. Is it would be a complete nightmare and a headache without two rails to be able to run all that freight and all those passenger trains. It would be crazy.
I am really
to try to do it on
dismayed
one
that
line.
they were not sensitive. I know that when you have federal programs, when they're bringing in highway systems, they spend a lot of time and money investigating that space before they intrude upon it.
Yeah,
And
appraisers
if there's
go out.
anything architecturally significant, you bring in appropriate people, and it takes forever to clear those areas or to declare them, you know.
Just stay up there, Ken.
Well, they're operating. Well, the thing is, they're operating on guidelines based back when the rail was first created. So a lot of these they haven't even changed.
So I think that might be our best argument. This is the way you do it in a.
I don't want to interrupt you guys
No.
too much, but back to your comments as a board, because you are a very special board. When your comments go forward, it shows the EIS study, and Mrs. Brady made a very good point. She was very disappointed with the study because it left out some of these issues, and local knowledge is the best. Mrs. Stanbridge has pointed out to you all what they missed. So if you can echo with some of your comments, it's important in that they see that. They say, oh, they left this out, so they have to come back and revisit this. So I know it's a short amount of time for the comment period, but this is important, you as a preservation board, to let the folks in Washington, to let the feds know, excuse me, you forgot these things. You know, you're echoing what you have there, but it's reinforcement for them to take a revisit on these issues.
To submit comments, what is the time frame?
You have to
31st.
December 3rd.
No, with this
October
Oh, 31st for what you guys are doing.
So today.
Another thing I'd like
Yeah,
to point out
today.
too is part of the study I've noticed is with this, what they're claiming also is because the rail's already there, we're not making an impact. We're just having a high-speed train go through. So that's part of their premise, is it's already there, we're not making an impact, and we have to show otherwise.
How fast does the current train go? And I know that they occasionally slow down.
They can go,
particularly
what, to
when I'm in a hurry.
75? What is it?
How fast?
The average freight train is somewhere between 40 and 45 miles an hour is what we've been told. And a freight train that they are talking about, if the improvements are made in Miami, which are underway, and then the Panama Canal, a train could be as long as 2 miles in length. And the speed before you hit the high-speed trains is 79 miles an hour, but the freight trains don't ever get to that point. They're relatively slow. If 45 miles an hour is slow,
Which is even worse.
but they will exceed the 2 mile length. They could exceed the 2 mile.
That's like
So
out
in
on the
theory,
prairie.
It just shuts down. It shuts down town because we don't have any overpasses over any of the tracks,
Nor do we
and
have-
also because of I think the location of our one hospital. That I think that's really going to create a big problem for our medical.
Yeah.
Services.
One of the problems we have with the train issues in this country, you were talking about, are there trains that build economies and that kind of stuff? Well, in Europe, they build the overpasses, and that's how the trains go through. Unfortunately for us in America, we have these train tracks have been there since 1800. They go through what now is our urban areas, so it's a different impact compared to how they designed and built it in other areas. You go up into the Northeast, they're all run on subsidies. Nobody can show one that doesn't have a subsidy of some type. But those trains were really built by necessity. I mean, there's just so much room in Connecticut and Rhode Island to get to New York, so you had to build some type of mass transportation, and so trains became the facilitation. The other issue that we have, and one of the reasons that they're even going through the Federal Railroad Administration on this grant, it's not a grant, excuse me, a loan, is that railroads now are part of our national defense of communications, sort of like the interstate highway. Railroads are now being designated as that, so they're giving a lot of emphasis to keeping those corridors open. And so the loans, as I understand from what we've been able to read on the websites, are really to enhance existing corridors in order to facilitate the trains as a part of that designation of national defense. The irony is, in our particular case, we have the East Coast Railroad, and then we also have the one that goes down through Okeechobee in the center part of the state. So from a transportation standpoint, we obviously are pretty well equipped without really totally enhancing what's on the East Coast. But you have two different companies, and I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with railroads before, but it's worse than dealing with the federal government, or FEMA in our case, and trying to get something done. They're a very large bureaucratic organization. So one train company doesn't really want to deal with the other train company, and CSX sits over here, and the FEC sits over here, and they know how difficult it is for people to work with them, and it obviously would be just as difficult. Plus, there's a cost involved. FEC owns the right-of-way. They own 100 feet in where the tracks exist. And they also own the corridor where the people exist. So if they do want to designate stops and they want to get somebody from Miami to Jacksonville, they obviously have the corridor to do it, as opposed to stopping in Okeechobee, as an example. They just don't have that.
I'm wondering, is there friction between those groups? There would have to be, I would think.
I think there is competition. For example, FEC is trying to buy all, or as much as they can, of the freight locations in the Port of Miami to try to make sure that they, I would presume, out-equip CSX. But it's a competitive issue, the ton of freight that you send, who's going to get that. And one of the issues right now, from what we're being told, is that we're a one-way direction for freight, and that is to the north. And so and I believe I'm right in it, the south trains are empty because there's not that many customers. The north trains are full. So just like if you're running a truck, you try to fill up the trailer both directions. But now with this, there may be a change in that, because if the Port of Miami becomes an exporter and the Panama Canal starts taking, then they'll have more freight going south, and they will have those trains that will be filled in both directions. And so, again, the competition between CSX and FEC will be where the real rub comes in. So,
and quite a few of the ports have been beefing up, like Canaveral, and a lot of them already have agreements. They've been working with FEC and FEC, and things are moving forward in other areas, which is why I've always felt that we had to do more to look at how it's going to affect us, because Miami, Lauderdale, West Palm's fighting. Some of that area is still not in agreement, but the Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral area, they're all in Brevard County. They're pretty much, So here we are in the middle.
Yeah. And you're right. There's a lot of national emphasis on us for our economy, the building up of our economy, to make sure we can do the export and import. And ships right now seem to be the most economical way, but not the fastest way to move freight. So building up the ports along the East Coast and also the West Coast, I'm sure they're investing there, and probably into the Gulf, is to be able to get goods moving both east and west from us. And so that's where they're going. So again, there's federal emphasis. There's billions of dollars involved in these plans and programs that are taking place. And we're a relatively small little dot in all of this exercise, but I think it's imperative that we at least get our comments out that people understand. And it really is not a bad idea that if the Historical Commission endorses what is being submitted, I'm sorry, what was the lady's name?
Ruth Stanbridge, the county historian.
Yeah, and she is supposedly the world's best in this general area of history, and she has spoken to the to the Train Commission as well as to the MPO, and she's been involved in this exercise. And if we just sort of say we endorse that, assuming you do endorse her position, obviously you've read it, I think it's important that we put that foot forward and sort of give a unified voice. And that's one of the things we're trying to achieve, is that Indian River County will be unified, if in fact that can ever happen, and in our discussions over at least one topic, and that is the railroad. And the railroad issue it affects Sebastian and ourselves and total Indian River County really equally. And as Ken said earlier, the likelihood of a stop is pretty remote. And part of that is because agreements that they have with the Crosstown Expressway right-of-way in order to meet their 3-hour designation from Orlando to Miami. And there are some other benefits that people are getting. For example, in West Palm Beach and in Dade County, there's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate investment that are going to be made in those cities at their stops. And there are buildings being proposed that FEC already owns the real estate,
right,
because that was part of their acquisition when the Flagler Corporation started buying up railroad. And they had all this real estate and nobody could use it at that point. Now they've figured out a way of doing it. And part of their economic analysis is not just the train passengers, but the return on investment of that real estate investment.
Well, they've held it long enough.
They have. I'm not sure the rate of return would be all that great.
Yeah, boy, they'd really have to do a whopping business. I hate to do anything to interfere with, Florida's economy and commerce here, but so how long, if it doesn't slow down, and I'm hearing it's not going to slow down if it doesn't stop here. If it doesn't slow down, how long will it take for this train to be in and out of here? Like you're waiting, you got an MI, you want to go to the hospital, you're west of the track, the ambulance is there. How long are you going to sit there?
You're really talking about seconds. It's even if all of the things went down in the city of Vero Beach at one time and the train's doing 110 miles an hour, it goes, compared to a 2-mile long freight train.
Those are the ones that are going to kill us.
they are really hard. But the fact of the matter is there's 32 of these trains, and we happen to be
32 high-speed trains?
Right.
Yes. There's 16 in each direction.
4 an hour.
And so we happen to be right in the...
4 an hour.
2 an hour, sorry.
We happen to be in the crossroads of that during the day. So we're going to have the trains north and southbound right between Aviation Boulevard and Sebastian.
Oh, my God.
And the other thing, don't forget they're adding the extra tracks. So not only will we have the high-speed rail, even though they're not addressing it because All Aboard Florida is a separate arm, we will have the freight at the same time. Mm-hmm. So they're both coinciding.
And we already have freight. And we're nowhere close to where the freight was at its peak in Vero Beach, which was in the 2005, 6, 7 era. So they're still recovering from that economic downturn, which they will do naturally.
Hard to imagine, isn't it, having
and taking a position, and Deborah, just going back to what your comments were, I think the city is going to take a position that we're in opposition to the train as it is presently designed to come through the city of Vero Beach with 32 trains doing 110 miles an hour and the impact on the community. But if there is a way for them to mitigate that, for example, the federal government could, I would think, under their regulatory controls, force going through the center part of the state, as an example. There are options in order to accomplish the same goal that they want, but it would have to take, I think, a third party. I don't believe the two railroads would get together. And it's also, just to let you know, that they are also going after some private financing. And it's my understanding Brevard County just endorsed that, which they don't need the endorsement of Indian River County anymore because they got the majority of the counties to do private, well, quasi-private in the fact that it's tax-free bond issues that will be endorsed by the counties that have made those endorsements. And so therefore, if the Federal Railroad Administration turns them down, then they could go back theoretically and have this financing through the tax-free bond issues and do that. Again, we're a very, very small dot in this whole play. There's billions of dollars involved, but I think it's important for us to at least have our word into the discussions. And we're allotted this short period of time to do that. And again, if we can do it in one voice that we're all not going haywire over this, then it's much easier and much better, I think, to explain when it gets to those federal desks.
Wait, have you taken the temperature of other small towns that are going to be upset by the chaoses of the
Like Stewart, maybe?
We're
cocoa?
We're not
all
even
those-
close to the impact in Stewart. The impact in Stewart is just
Oh, my God.
tremendous. I mean, it is, and they have condominiums that are not 50 feet from the railroad right away that are along the water area, and they have restaurants that they'll probably have to, the dishes will
Fall off the shelves.
Yeah. So it's going to be, although give credit to all aboard Florida, what they're saying is the renovation to the tracks that they're going to do, there'll be less vibration than what you see on a freight train.
Do you think there'll be any studies of the actual impact on historic buildings like our diesel plant? I mean, brick buildings are affected because they move. You have the mortar and the brick.
Well,
Those
first of all,
vibrations.
you've got to get them to be recognized under this EIS.
Okay.
And the fact that they haven't recognized them, then they haven't done the studies. The buildings and the facilities that they have recognized in the EIS, they had to do the studies.
Okay.
And so they theoretically did the studies and minimal impact and that kind of stuff. But if you ever look at the EIS, now this document's 522
Huge.
pages, but I mean it says that they're going to have a positive effect on climate change, and they're going to be changing the total economics of the state of Florida and all this other stuff. But they're the ones that wrote the EIS. So it's
They're
I
selling
can
it.
understand it really, and it sounds good if you sort of fall into that area. But again, there were things, in our opinion, that they overlooked, and that's what we want to designate.
One of the things I found interesting is they claim, 3 million cars they'll be taking off the road? And how do you force someone not to drive? Because that's essentially it. I mean, they're hoping people will stop driving.
Well, one of the problems
it's
they have,
voluntary.
one of the problems they have here compared to the Northeast, they just ran out of space, and so in the Northeast, you had to find options because you can't get from point A to point B without public transportation. In the state of Florida, you take the Turnpike or 75 and you can go north and south in this state, and we complain about the trucks and the traffic, but the fact of the matter is, in my trips through Connecticut as an example, it's much more dangerous there because even with their public transportation.
Just because of population
By
density.
the population density. And again, there's no space. Everything was built, and they have those large population.
But all
There-
over Florida,
Packed
is,
in.
a lot of it's based on theory. I mean, because it hasn't happened yet. And they're optimistic. I mean, this is something they want to achieve. So they've done everything to make this move forward.
Yeah.
That's what their intention is. So the way I see it is we need to make sure, and if it goes through, that we've done what we need to do to take care of ourselves, protect ourselves, take care of our interests, because we're not part of that. We're not part of their interest. We're not part of that equation.
Right.
So we need to make sure
We're
we
not being
take care of
considered.
ourselves, right? And another thing that bothered me was we're not really viewed. We see ourselves as urban. We see ourselves as up and coming. We see ourselves as active in a thriving community. But they see us as rural, and that's how they based a lot of their studies too. Is they had an idea of metropolis and city size and that sort of thing, and we just didn't fit the category.
They consider us rural?
Yeah.
This is rural.
Yeah, we're not going through Newark, New Jersey, and
So-
that's where you designate. That's who you're competing
It's all
with in all
relative.
these. Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
So it is a point of view, and that's why we need to make sure that we take care of what we believe we need to do.
Yeah, and I think just getting on record, in case there is something that, even if the train goes, and if it does go through, hopefully they're going to be successful and we're not going to be stuck with 2 tracks and no trains or something. But the key is that if something should happen, at least we're on record as saying this should have been
Should have been
addressed
part
at
of
the
it,
time. And I think that's sort of the critical part of where we're going. And again, our input is relatively small, but at least we would be on record somewhere.
I don't think it's small.
So do we need to meet again to?
No, I think we can
Can we
make a
just
motion.
make a
I
motion
have
to-
kind of a draft if you want me
Okay,
to
yes.
take a stab at it. So I would make a motion to, I guess, to include the statement that the Vero Beach Historic Preservation Commission is very concerned and disappointed that the EIS supplied by the AAF, and we know the EIS is the Environmental Impact Statement.
Draft D.
Pardon me?
Draft
The
environment.
draft, yes. So the DEIS supplied by the AAF, all aboard Florida, failed to reflect the historic and cultural resources that fall within the city of Vero Beach limits as identified by Ruth Stambridge. And then I would also include in that, and I did not mention this, a potential National Register district in our downtown, which those boundaries could be, cover a large
Yeah.
part of
With-
downtown.
That whole area.
Do you want to
And
say
that
that
was
we
my-
feel
and
it would
that
be
was it.
adversely, they would be adversely affected?
Could be.
Could, yeah. And we feel they could be adversely affected. Yes. How's something like that? Or do we want
So-
Sherry to read that back? Or
Get it all.
Make sure you get the alphabet soup in there too. That's
Yeah.
my favorite part.
you want to try to repeat it again, Sherry? Or-
What I have is that you made a motion to include the statement that the Historic Preservation Commission is very concerned and disappointed that the DEIS and the supply that is supplied by All Aboard Florida failed to reflect the historic and cultural resources. And I missed a little bit after that.
that fall within the city of Vero Beach, so within the boundaries of the city of Vero Beach, are located, something like that. And as identified by Ruth Stambridge,
Okay, and as identified by Ruth Stanbridge for the potential National Register district.
and I think we need an and because I'm not sure that was on her sheet, a potential National Register district in downtown Vero Beach.
Did you say historical? You said cultural. Did you say historical and archaeological?
I said historic and cultural, and that covers archaeological, but we can add archaeological.
I'm thinking Ruth's got it
Just
in
to
her
be more
letter.
specific.
Yeah, she
Okay,
has
then
it.
let's go back. Failed to reflect the historic, cultural, and archaeological resources. That's what we're going to change that to. So add historic, cultural, and archaeological resources. We'll just say that are located. What do we say that are located in the city of Vero Beach? I had that fall within the city of Vero Beach.
Do we need, I think that's understood since
Okay.
that's who we are. Maybe
So-
we'll just put,
And cultural resources as identified. Why don't we just get that? As identified
identified.
by Ruth Stambridge.
that could be adversely affected, the end.
And a potential National Register district in the downtown.
Okay.
That's
The
my-
more the merrier.
And then we can say, we can have a period, another comment.
Yeah, because she does mention other properties that may be or areas that may be.
We feel these resources could be adversely affected. That will be the next sentence.
could be. What did?
Could be.
Could be.
Adversely affected. We feel, or we believe, not feel, we believe.
Right. Nobody cares about our feelings.
So they don't need a consensus. The train will come. We're just trying to get our comments.
This will help with mitigation if we need to.
So that's the proposed motion on the floor, table, whatever.
So, motion to,
Do you want her to read it
Approve
back,
the-
or do you want her to read it back, or does everybody understand? Okay.
I'll make a motion to,
You want a second motion?
all in favor?
yeah.
We got it. We hate trains. No, just.
Will that mean that you'll prepare the letter and the chairman will sign? Is that what you're thinking, Sherry?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing
you
that
wanna-
to our attention.
Vote?
I hope we could help.
We need
All in favor?
I thought we did. Just now, we did it.
Second?
We did. You were just
Who was
too
the
busy
motion?
typing.
Who made the motion?
Actually,
I made
Anna
the
did.
motion. Stacy seconded.
And we all
And we
said aye.
said aye, quietly. It's 11:04, we're starting to mumble.
Yeah.
All right, I have new business. Have we skipped anything? Are we missing anything?
Do you want to talk about the Wellington at all, or put that to next?
I am going to surrender my time just because we have gone on here with other things. Gail, do you have any other?
Nothing additional.
Good girl. Just very quickly, I received, the only thing I'm going to mention again is the plaque. And you have a photo of the one that I tried to construct according to your input last meeting, and I positioned the date. Of course, we have nothing here as old as 1790, but that was just the easiest one for me to attach. Is everybody good with that?
That looks great.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. And then, of course, the finish will not be that dark and sinister. It will be a something more related to this. Not as bright probably as this, but with the depth and shading of this one, right? Because we did want the gold.
Do we want to approve that?
Sure. Why don't we?
If we're done,
Yeah, I would like to.
I'll make a motion to approve that design.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you want to vote up there? We
I
need
feel
more
like I'm talking
voices.
about, like James Shatner.
All right. We have our plaque design. My God, that
Do you
took a
need
lot of
those,
doing.
Or do you want to give the finals to Sherry for this record?
I think everybody has heaps of them. They're
Okay.
probably wallpapering rooms back there with them by now.
Okay, I'll take one because I don't have a copy.
Okay.
I didn't make one.
Or did they send one to you? Excellent. All right. So that's it. I'm not saying another thing. Members matters.
We can put this.
Yeah.
We had talked.
Do we want to do this just quickly? Because I think it's an important thing, and it should be ongoing. Our awareness of conditions in these, and particularly the neighborhood downtowns. This was new to me. This whole concept was new to me, and if it works, I think it's great. If Wellington has had a good response to this, I have never been. I'll begin by saying I've never been anywhere in Wellington that approximates what we have here to deal with.
Code-wise?
Yeah, and I know Wellington like the back of my hand. So what may work in Wellington may not be as easily implemented, and we may not see the results that they do.
I thought the whole idea was just to consider it as a concept. I mean, it's up to the elected officials if they decide to do this. It would be nice if that were so. We've had some in the past do it, that have done that, walk the neighborhood. So I don't know if they have districts there. I'd have to look into it more and see if perhaps sometimes when elected officials are voted in by district, there are some understood obligations. Some of them even have separate budgets. So I would have to look into it more to see, how it originated, how it really. This is just an article announcing, that they do it, and I wouldn't be concerned so much about whether their issues are the same as ours, but we still have our own issues, and whether or not we can see if we can apply this, and if the elected officials are not as open to it. But I think you're going to find some that are. Perhaps I know previous city managers, code officials, planning and zoning directors. They've done walkthroughs too, so there might be other approaches. But there's a way to accomplish it. We've done it before, actually, in Osceola Park.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea, and I think it can be relevant to a lot of aspects of the city. For instance, when I was at the Main Street Conference in Stewart, we did a walking audit with Dan Burden, and that was more focused on pedestrian friendliness and how the traffic was designed now to flow. So it can come from an urban planning standpoint.
That's a great idea.
As well. And so you're not only it's really like a workshop in the field.
Right.
And it makes so much more sense because you're looking at the problems, whether it's code enforcement issues. I know, like we've done in Osceola Park, where people aren't taking care of their properties, or we've had foreclosures. And I think it's a very efficient and way to work with government and for government to engage the public.
I think if we make suggestions based on, our concerns and how it would help folks feel more enabled in taking care of their historic properties and that sort of venue, then
and address the revitalization
Right.
issues of historic properties, looking at the ones that are threatened and saying, we need to do something about this. Look at the impact this is going to have if we don't.
and how can we work with back to the misunderstandings and misconceptions. Some
So-
people just let their properties go because they're not quite sure what else to do. So I can see where we can incorporate it, and if based on the time, of course, and other things we're working on.
So what can we do as a board?
That's what I was going to say.
So we
could come up with
solicit city
ideas.
council because they may be totally unfamiliar with the concept, and see if we could get them to commit to participating in something like this.
I think we should come up with some suggestions first, ideas, and then present it
ideas
based on how it's relative to what we're working on.
like what we're trying to accomplish.
So do that first before you present it, because otherwise you're just presenting an open concept. They're going to want to
Here's
know.
the concept, and these are the things that we would expect you to try to have a conversation.
It's like when you
These are
have a
topics.
problem and you want to go see the person in charge to fix that problem. They're going to ask you, what are your suggestions to fix this problem? So that's essentially what we're doing, is we see areas of concern, see areas of need, so we're going to come up with suggestions, recommendations, whatever, and then we present it to council in some sort of format.
My suggestion here is have our next meeting sometime in the near future, entirely devote that meeting, change the agenda format so that we're dealing with putting the finishing touches on this and assembling whatever materials we have by then, and then also refining that so that we have something to take to them. What do you think? So, can we come prepared to do that to our next meeting? So our next meeting will be when? What is today?
She's got to get back to us, right?
Not with our
We
regular
needed to-
meeting.
Okay, that's a regular meeting, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was for the evening.
All righty.
this isn't the cocktail hour, the happy hour meeting. Jeffrey, is this all just too exciting for you? You almost didn't come today.
So I was here for, I was on time today.
Okay, so we're going into November then?
Yes.
My phone is.
Even with 2 days' notice.
See that? You've got your priorities straight.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's the 23rd. So let's go.
When is that? 20.
I think Thanksgiving's the 27th, isn't it? Or is it the 20th? I don't know.
27th. So when, in theory, were we thinking about doing the workshop and the combined workshop? Or we were going to do the Main Street run-through first. So when are we going to do that here in
December,
Chamber?
right?
December. So we need
Okay.
a workshop in November to finalize the.
That's what
I
I'm
thought
just
you were going to do
thinking.
December or January. Didn't he say that he was meeting with them?
In
I'll have to
3
review it. I
weeks,
don't-
I
December,
thought.
yeah, December. We were going to try to present it to Main Street as
As a
like the
practice. As a
test
practice.
case.
Practice
Yeah,
And then the
like-
public in January.
So do we want to meet the week before Thanksgiving, or do we want to try to meet Thanksgiving week?
No.
No, not Thanksgiving.
Right.
Week
Yeah.
before,
Sounds good to me.
a lot of travel.
20th?
We can't do it on the 20th.
Is anything going on the 19th?
Yes. That week is not a very good week. We can try the 21st.
What is
Friday
it?
the 21st.
Candidates or something.
I just think of the first week of December, but
Friday the 21st,
It's good with me.
same time, same place.
Yep.
And then when should I get it to you all?
I need it before the 14th, so I can send it out by the 14th.
And I'll include text. And Sherry's going to send me, you're going to send me Deborah's comments from today? Okay.
I'm going to send it to everybody so that everybody
To
has
everybody,
it.
yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
God, I can't get used to this new format. All right, and materials by the 14th? Additional materials.
That's for me.
You need
I
to
have
receive.
to submit
Yeah,
it.
well,
Okay.
in case I have more things for you.
For Sherry.
For Sherry, for you.
For everybody.
If you want it included in the agenda packet, if you get it to me by the 14th, then that's the date I normally try to send them out, so you have it a week ahead of time.
Okay.
You're going to be a few days later.
Okay. And understand, Anna, when you look at the materials that I've already
I have email.
prepared, that the bottom
I have
part
2
is the
emails.
recitation. It's not
That's okay,
something
yeah.
you're going to put up there and bore everybody to death.
Make it.
And then we'll need during that
Yeah,
workshop
right.
the access to PowerPoint so I can edit as we go. Okay.
All right, we have the questions. Good. I think that's it.
so the
Have we
Wellington
set it
is
up?
November 21. Discussion on November 21.
Yes.
9:30, correct?
Yeah. And the two things we will occupy ourselves with are the workshop materials, assembling that, and then the walk and talk, which I think is a great concept. What do you think of the idea of us doing that also, or is that overkill? Or is it typically done by, oh, look, I can hear myself, by council members? Better for them to do it?
What did you ask?
The walk and talk, if we're going through our historic neighborhoods.
I guess that we have to see how it works, right? Because of the sunshine, it's going to have to be advertised. Is that how they do it? That's just.
I believe, if I'm
council
not
members get
mistaken,
together?
I could ask, Sherry perhaps could go
Yes.
back through the minutes when Mark Satterley did the walkthroughs. and-
If staff does it, then it doesn't have
But
to
I
be.
think-
But
but
if
I
the
think-
board member does, then if more
Okay, the
than one
board
board
members.
member, then it does
Now,
have
I
to be
do know that
advertised.
some city council
Okay.
members did show up. I don't remember if that was advertised back then, if you want to know the truth. So
It all depends on how you're going to do
it
it.
may not be a bad idea, though, for others to be able to show up.
Okay. Anything else? Time to go home. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Deb.